The morning sun bathed the small Nigerian town in a golden glow, casting long shadows over the red earth roads. Birds chirped in the distance as Obiageli walked through the narrow market streets, smiling at familiar faces. She had always been known as the girl who belonged to Obinna. Ever since their school days, their love had been unshakable. Imon and Obiageli had grown up together, attend the same secondary school. They were inseparable, always sitting next to each other in class, walking home together, and dreaming of a future where nothing could come between them. When Obinna got a scholarship to study abroad, it was the most bittersweet moment of their lives. He was leaving, but he had promised her, no matter how far I go, I will always come back for you. And he kept his word. Even while in London, Obinna never missed a day without calling her. His voice became the most familiar thing in her life. They spoke about everything: her studies in banking, his struggles abroad, their future together. He introduced her to his parents before he left, and they adored her. His wealthy father, Chief Okafor, and his kind-hearted mother, Madame Uju, treated her like a daughter. She often visited them, helping out at their mansion, and they became so proud of the woman she was becoming. But not everyone believed in long-distance love. Obiageli's parents, especially her mother, constantly pressured her. "My daughter, you are a beautiful woman. Many rich men have come with drinks, asking for your hand in marriage, but you keep rejecting them. Obinna is far away. You don't know what he is doing there." Yet, Obiageli never wavered there. She turned down every suitor, ignoring even the wealthiest men who brought gifts and proposals. Her heart belongs to Obinna, and no one else could take his place. Then, after many years, Obinna finally returned. The moment she saw him again, Obiageli felt like time had stopped. Standing tall in the airport, dressed in a fine suit, Obinna was even more handsome than she remembered. His eyes held the same warmth, the same love she had cherished all these years. He pulled her into his arms, whispering, "I told you I'd come back for you." The wedding preparations began immediately. Chief Okafor and Madame Uju spared no expense, throwing the grandest ceremony the town had seen in years. The elders praised Obiageli for her patience and faithfulness. "You have proven that true love waits," they told her. Obinna was everything she had ever dreamed of. He showered her with love, attention, and promises of a bright future. He bought her a beautiful house where they started their life together. Soon, the biggest blessing arrived. Obiageli was pregnant. It was the happiest time of her life. She would wake up to Obinna's soft kisses, spend her days decorating their home, and fall asleep listening to him talk about their future. "When our child is born," he said one night, rubbing her belly, "we will make this house a home filled with love." But happiness, it seemed, was never meant to last forever. After the festive period, Obinna had to return to London to handle some urgent business. It was a painful goodbye, but he promised to come back soon. "Just a few months, my love," he assured her, "and then we will never be apart again." Obiageli held on to those words, never doubting him for a second, and true to his word, he never stopped calling. Even after he landed in London, he called her every morning, every night, checking on her and the baby. When their baby girl was born, he was overjoyed, sending money for everything she needed. His voice was filled with love and excitement. But what Obiageli didn't know was that Obinna was already gone. One evening, a few months after the baby's birth, Obiageli was feeding her daughter when her phone rang. It was Obinna. "My love," his deep voice filled the room. "How is our princess?" Obiageli smiled, cradling the baby. "She's perfect, Obinna. You should see how much she looks like you." "I can imagine," he chuckled. "I wish I was there." Her heart ached. "Come home soon, Obinna. She needs you. I need you." A brief silence. Then softly he said, I will always be with you. Obiageli didn't know why, but a strange chill ran down her spine. Far away in London, a reality no one knew was buried in silence. Weeks earlier, Obinna had traveled to another state for work. He never returned. A tragic car accident had taken his life. But no one knew, not his parents, not Obiageli, not even his close friends. And yet, he kept calling. He kept sending money. He kept speaking as if nothing had changed. And no one, not even Obiageli, suspected a thing. The baby's cries echoed through the house as Obiageli rocked her gently, humming a lullaby. The night was calm, the moonlight streaming through the curtains, bathing the room in a soft glow. As she laid her daughter down, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. She picked it up, already knowing who it was. "Obinna," she whispered as she answered the call. "My love." His voice came through warm and steady, as if he were just in the next room. "Is our baby asleep?" Obiageli smiled. "Yes, she just ate. She looks more like you every day." His chuckle sent a familiar warmth through her chest. "That means she will be beautiful like her mother." She blushed, just as she always did. "When are you coming home? It's been months now. Our daughter needs you." A long silence. Then, his voice, soft yet distant. "Soon, my love. Very soon." Something about the way he said it sent a strange shiver down her spine. But she ignored it. He was probably just tired. Long-distance love wasn't easy, but their bond was unbreakable. Obinna never missed a call. He sent money regularly, making sure they lacked nothing. He even spoke with his parents frequently, comforting them with his voice, assuring them he would visit soon. And yet, he never sent pictures anymore. He never video called, but nobody questioned it, until one day, everything changed. It was a regular morning when Obiageli's phone rang. She was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for her daughter, humming a soft tune. When she saw the number, she frowned. It was unfamiliar, an international number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" A man's voice came through the line. "Good morning. Am I speaking to Obiageli?" She tensed. "Yes, who is this?" A long sigh. Then the man spoke again, his voice heavy with something she couldn't yet understand. "My name is Chukwudi. I was Obinna's roommate in London." A small smile played on her lips. "Oh, you must be his friend. How is he?" Another silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, the man said, "Obinna is dead." Obiageli's heart stopped. For a moment, everything around her blurred. The air in the kitchen became too heavy. The walls seemed to close in. "No," she breathed, gripping the counter for support. "No, you must be mistaken. I just spoke to him last night. He calls me every day." "I know," Chukwudi said, his voice shaking. "That's why I had to call you. I don't understand it either. He is still calling everyone that, did you know he is dead? I was called to identify him myself, though he was beyond recognition. But that was his car, and other 4 cars involved in the accident, with a trailer carrying a gasoline. And nobody came out alive. It all happened when Obinna traveled to another state for work, and he never came back. I have been waiting for months, thinking he would show up one day, since I didn't recognize him in the fire. But just yesterday, our old friend told me he called him last week. I had to look for people that knows his parent and wife, and that was how I got your phone no. From our old friend from another state, so I decided to call you. The world tilted beneath our fate. Chukwudi took a deep breath before continuing. The accident happened months ago. His car skidded off the road. He died on the spot. Obiageli's chest tightened. "No, it wasn't possible. It wasn't true." "Obinna is not dead," she whispered, gripping her phone so hard her fingers turned numb. I just spoke to him. The man let out a shaky breath. Then tell me, Obiageli, have you seen him? Not heard from him, not received money, have you seen him? A sharp pain shot through her heart because suddenly she realized she had not seen Obinna in months. And yet, he had never stopped talking to her. The phone slipped from her fingers and hit the cold kitchen floor. Her legs gave way beneath her, and as she fell, a scream tore from her lips. The scream that tore from Obiageli's lips startled her baby, who immediately burst into tears. But she didn't hear. She didn't feel. Her whole world had just shattered into pieces too small to hold onto. She stared at the phone lying on the floor, Chukwudi's words ringing in her ears. Obinna is dead. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be possible. With shaky hands, she picked up the phone and pressed it back to her ear. Chukwudi, this is a mistake. I just spoke to him, I swear. He calls me every day. He sends me money. He talks to his parents. I know. Chukwudi interrupted. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. That's why I didn't call earlier. I thought I was going crazy. But Obiageli, I was there when he died. I was the one who identified his body. We buried him here in London. It was real. Obiageli felt like she couldn't breathe. Her heart was hammering in her chest, a steady drum of panic and confusion. If Obinna was dead, who had she been talking to? She ended the call without another word. Her hands shook as she scrolled through her phone. She clicked on Obinna's number, pressed call. The phone rang once, twice. Then, hello, my love. Her breath caught. The voice was the same, warm, familiar, real. She swallowed, her throat dry. Obinna, she whispered, where are you? A pause. Then his voice came through, soft but distant. I am where I have always been, close to you. A chill ran down her spine. Her lips trembled. Obinna, are you alive? Silence. Then a low chuckle. Why are you asking me that, my love? Tears filled her eyes. Because I just spoke to Chukwudi. He told me you had an accident. That you died. Another silence. The air around her suddenly felt heavy, as if something unseen was pressing down on her chest. Then, in the softest whisper, Obinna said, does it matter? Obiageli's blood ran cold. What? She breathed. His voice was calm, almost soothing. Does it matter? I'm still here. I still love you. I still provide for you and our daughter. I'm still the same Obinna, aren't I? Her hands trembled as she gripped the phone. No, Obinna. If you're dead, how are you calling me? How are you sending money? Who? Her voice broke. Who are you? The line crackled. His voice was softer now. I'm your husband. I promised you I would always be here, didn't I? Tears streamed down Obiageli's face. This wasn't normal. This wasn't right. But the hardest part to accept was that she still loved him, even now, even knowing what she had just been told. She wanted to believe that love was stronger than death. But deep down, she knew something unnatural was happening, and she had no idea how to stop it. The night felt colder than usual, and Obiageli could feel the weight of something unseen pressing against her chest. Sleep refused to come. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding. Obinna was dead, but he was still here. She turned on her side and reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through her messages. Everything was normal. His last texts were still there from earlier that evening. Good night, my love. Kiss our little princess for me. I love you. Her breath hitched. It sounded so real, so normal. Slowly she clicked on their chat history and scrolled up, looking for any sign that something was wrong. But there was nothing. Every call, every message, every money transfer, it was all there. Yet, deep in her heart, she knew the truth. She needed answers. The next morning, Obiageli left her baby with her mother and drove straight to Obinna's family house. The large compound was as quiet as ever, the security guards greeting her with warm smiles as she stepped inside. Chief Okafor and Madam Uju sat in the living room, drinking tea, their faces lighting up as she walked in. My daughter, you came early today. Madam Uju beamed. How is our grandchild? She's fine, Mama. Obiageli forced a smile. She hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. Mama, Papa, I need to ask you something. Chief Okafor set down his cap and frowned. What is it, my daughter? She swallowed hard. When was the last time you saw Obinna? Silence. Madam Uju shifted uncomfortably in her seat. We haven't seen him in person since he left after your wedding. But he calls every week, and he sent money just last week for my hospital bills. Obiageli clenched her fists. The same story, the same pattern. She looked at Chief Okafor, her voice barely above a whisper. Papa, I spoke to someone in London. Someone who told me Obinna had an accident, that he died months ago. Madame Uju gasped, her hands flying to her chest. God forbid! Who told you such a wicked lie? Obiageli's lips trembled. His old roommate. He said he saw the accident, that he buried him. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Chief Okafor's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. That is impossible. My son cannot be dead. He just spoke to me 3 days ago. Obiageli's heart ached. She had expected this reaction. Because how could anyone believe their son was gone when he was still speaking to them? She reached for her phone with shaking hands and dialed Obinna's number. The room was so quiet that the ringing echoed like a distant bell, and then his voice came through. Hello, my love. Tears streamed down Obiageli's face. Her in-laws gasped. She put the call on speaker. Obinna, her voice cracked. Where are you? A soft chuckle. You already know where I am. Chief Okafor's face paled. Madame Uju clutched her chest, staring at the phone as if it held a ghost. Obinna, Obiageli whispered. Are you dead? Another pause. Then, in a calm, soothing tone, he said, Why does it matter? I am still here. A scream burst from Madame Uju's lips as the phone slipped from Obiageli's hands. For the first time, they all knew the truth. Obinna was dead, but he was not gone. The room felt like it was closing in. Madame Uju was still screaming, clutching her chest, while Chief Okafor sat frozen, staring at the phone like it was a cursed object. Obiageli could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, drowning out every other sound. The call was still connected. Obinna was still there. Obiageli grabbed the phone with trembling hands and placed it back to her ear. Her voice was weak, barely above a whisper. Obinna, what are you? A deep chuckle came through the line. I am your husband, the father of your child. Did you think death could take me away from you? A sob broke from Obiageli's throat. You're dead, Obinna. You had an accident. I spoke to Chikudi. He saw it happen. But I am still here, Obinna interrupted. I promised you I would always take care of you. I promised my parents I would always provide for them. Have I broken my promise? Obiageli shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. This is not right. We're supposed to rest. Obinna, you're supposed to... I will rest when you no longer need me, he whispered. A shiver ran down her spine. The line went dead. For a moment, there was only silence. Madame Uju was still sobbing uncontrollably, and Chief Okafor was gripping the arms of his chair, his knuckles white. Obiageli turned to them, her voice shaking. We need to find out what is happening. This is not normal. Chief Okafor looked up slowly, his face pale with realization. This is not our son anymore. The next morning, Obiageli didn't go to work. She couldn't. She felt like she was trapped in a nightmare that refused to end. She held her baby close, rocking her gently, feeling the warmth of her tiny body. How could she explain to her daughter that her father was gone and yet still present? Determined, she called Chukudi again. Obiageli. His voice was surprised. Did you find out the truth? Her lips quivered. He called me. Again, I put him on speaker, and his parents heard him too. Chukudi was silent for a long moment. When I was called to identify him, I traveled hours to get there. But I could not really identify him due to the car caught fire during the accident, and Obinna was beyond recognition. But I know that was his car. Obiageli felt like she was going to be sick. All this time she had thought she was grieving a man she never saw dead. But now she wasn't even sure if he had ever truly died. She pressed a hand to her forehead. Chukudi, what do I do? How do I stop this? His voice was grim. You must let go, Obiageli. If Obinna is still here, it means something is holding him back. You must find out what it is and set him free. Obiageli's hands clenched into fists. Let go! How was she supposed to let go of the only man she had ever loved? And worse, what if he didn't want to be set free? That night, Obiageli sat by her baby's crib, staring at the phone in her hands. Would he call again? She didn't have to wait long. The screen lit up, Obinna calling. Her breath caught in her throat. She hesitated, then pressed answer. Obinna? My love, he greeted warmly. Why do you sound so sad? Tears welled in her eyes. Because you're not supposed to be here. A pause. Then, in a voice filled with something almost broken, he said, Do you want me to leave? Obiageli sobbed. I don't know anymore. Obinna's voice softened. I don't want to leave you. I don't want to leave our baby. Please, don't make me go. Obiageli's heart shattered. She had always thought love was the strongest force in the world, but now she realized love could also hold on to things that were no longer meant to stay. She whispered, You are already gone, my love, but your soul is still here. Silence. Then, for the first time since this nightmare began, Obinna's voice shook. I don't know how to go. The night air was thick with silence, the kind that felt almost unnatural. Obiageli sat on her bed, her phone still pressed against her ear. Her heart ached as she listened to the quiet, unsteady breaths on the other end. Obinna had never been this silent before. Her fingers trembled as she wiped a tear from her cheek. Obinna, why are you still here? A long pause. Then his voice came, softer than ever before. Because I don't want to leave you. Obiageli clenched her fists. She knew it. She had felt it in her bones. Obinna's love for her was so strong, so deep, that even death could not break it. But love was not enough to keep a soul tied to the world of the living. Tears spilled from her eyes. You can't stay here forever, Obinna. You are meant to rest. His voice cracked. How can I rest when I know you still need me? Obiageli let out a shaky breath. I do need you. I will always need you. But you are not supposed to be here. It's time to let go. The line was silent for a long time. Then, in a broken whisper, he asked, And what if I don't want to? Her breath hitched. Then you will never find peace. A deep sadness filled the space between them. Obiageli could feel it, almost as if he were right there beside her. I don't know how to go, Obiageli admitted again, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do. Obiageli's heart squeezed. She had to help him. The next morning, Obiageli went straight to Chief Okafor and Madame Uju's house. She had barely stepped through the door before Madame Uju rushed to her, gripping her arms. My daughter, did he call again? Obiageli nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. Mama, he doesn't know how to go. Madame Uju let out a heartbreaking cry and collapsed into a chair. My son, my son. Chief Okafor, who had been sitting in silence, cleared his throat. His voice was thick with emotion. Then we must help him. Obiageli wiped her eyes. I need to know, is there something unfinished? Something that could be keeping him here? Madame Uju sobbed into her wrapper, shaking her head. No, he had everything he wanted. He was happy. He loved you. He loved his daughter. He had no regrets. Chief Okafor, however, looked thoughtful. After a long pause, he said, His body. Obiageli stiffened. What? Chief Okafor's eyes were dark. We never buried him, my daughter. His body was never brought home. He is lost in a foreign land. A sharp pain shot through Obiageli's chest. Was that it? Was that why his soul was still wandering, still calling, still trying to live in a world where he no longer belonged? She looked at them, determination burning in her eyes. Then we must bring him home. Days later, Obiageli stood at the airport, holding her baby close as she prepared to board the flight to London. She had never traveled outside Nigeria before, but this wasn't a normal journey. She was going to find the man she loved, to lay him to rest. The moment she landed, Chukwudi was already waiting for her. His face was heavy with sorrow. You came, he said softly. Obiageli nodded, her throat tight. Take me to him. They drove in silence to the cemetery where the people involved in the accident was mass buried because they could not be identified. It was a small, quiet place far from the bustling city. The moment she saw his grave, her knees gave out. She collapsed onto the cold earth sobbing. She had spent months talking to him, loving him, holding on to him. But here he was, buried beneath the soil. Her tears fell onto the grave as she whispered, "Obinna, I'm here, I see you now." The wind around her shifted, like a sigh. For the first time she felt his presence in a different way. Not through a phone call, not through a text, but through the air itself. It was time. She pressed her palm against the gravestone. "My love, it's time to rest." The air around her grew colder. The wind carried a whisper that only she could hear. "Obiageli." She closed her eyes, feeling his presence one last time. "I love you, Obinna. I always will. But now, you must go." A gentle breeze brushed against her cheek, like the softest touch of a farewell. Then, for the first time in months, her phone did not ring. That night, Obiageli could not sleep. She sat in the small apartment Chukwili had arranged for her, staring at her phone. For the first time in months, it did not ring. Obinna had always called, always texted. But now, after she had stood before his supposed grave, there was only silence. It was as if somehow he knew. She took a deep breath and opened her laptop, searching for accident reports from the day Obinna had died. She needed to see for herself. After hours of searching, she found an article. A terrible crash, a burning vehicle, no survivors. Her hands trembled as she scrolled down. Obiageli's stomach twisted painfully. Obinna's body was not properly buried, as he was buried with other burnt people in same grave. He was never put to rest. Well, a horrible, terrifying thought entered her mind. What if Obinna wasn't just a voice on the phone? What if he was still somewhere? That night, Obiageli lay in bed, her mind racing. Her daughter slept peacefully beside her, unaware of the storm raging in her mother's heart. Then, at exactly midnight, her phone rang. Her breath hitched. The screen lit up. "Obianna, calling." Her fingers trembled as she picked up. "Obianna?" His voice was softer than before, weaker. "My love." Tears filled her eyes. "Where are you?" A pause. Then for the first time his voice broke. "I don't know," Obiageli sobbed. "Obinna, listen to me. Your body was not properly buried. That's why you can't move on." The silence on the other end was deafening. Then a soft whisper, so fragile it barely reached her ears. "Then do the right thing." A chill ran through her body. Tears streamed down her face. "I will, my love. I will do the right thing." The call ended. For the first time since his death, Obinna had asked for help. And Obiageli knew that she would have to go to the cemetery again to appease Obinna's spirit. That night, they made arrangements. Obiageli called Chief Okafor and Madame Uju, explaining everything through her sobs. Chief Okafor's voice was heavy. "We must perform a proper burial for him. If we can't find his body, we will bury something that represents him. He must be laid to rest." 1 week later, they held the ceremony in Nigeria. A small casket was placed in the family burial ground. It was empty, but it did matter. It was time to say goodbye. Obiageli stood before it, her baby girl in her arms, tears streaming down her face. She took a deep breath and whispered, "Obinna, you were the love of my life, but now, my love, you must rest." The wind blew gently, and for the first time in months, her phone did not ring. Obinna was finally gone, and in that moment, Obiageli knew. He had found his way home. The days after the burial felt strangely quiet. For the first time in 10 years, Obiageli woke up without expecting a phone call from Obinna. She no longer heard his voice in the night, no longer felt his presence lingering in the air. He was finally gone. But letting go didn't mean the pain disappeared. Some nights she still reached for her phone, half expecting to see his name on the screen. Other times she found herself waiting for a call that would never come. But with each passing day, she accepted the truth. Obinna had loved her, even in death. But now, he was where he truly belonged. Madame Uju fell sick after the burial. The grief of losing her only son was too much to bear. Obiageli visited every day, cooking for her, keeping her company. Sometimes, they would sit in silence, holding each other's hands, finding comfort in shared sorrow. Chief Okafor, once a strong and proud man, had grown quieter. But one evening, as Obiageli was about to leave, he stopped her at the door. "My daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you were a good wife to my son, and you are still a daughter to me. Papa," he placed a hand on her shoulder, "Obinna may be gone, but you will never be alone." In that moment, she realized something beautiful. Family was more than just the people we are born to. It was the people who stand by us, even after loss. She wasn't alone. A year passed. Obiageli watched as her daughter took her first steps, clapping and laughing as the little girl wobbled forward. "Come to Mama," she whispered, her heart swelling with love. She had named her Chizaram, meaning God has answered my prayers. She still visited Obiana's parents often, bringing Chizaram along. Madam Uju would hold the child close, whispering, "You have your father's eyes." Sundays were still hard. Some nights, she still missed him so deeply it hurt. But she had learned something important. Moving on didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing to live even after loss. One evening, as she stood on the balcony of her house, watching the sunset, a gentle breeze brushed against her cheek. She closed her eyes and smiled. Somehow she knew Obinna was at peace. And so was she. Love is eternal, but life must go on. True love never dies, but holding on to the past can prevent us from truly living. Obiageli had to let go of Obinna to find peace, just as he needed to rest. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. Obiageli didn't stop loving Obinna, but she learned that moving forward didn't erase the love they shared. She honored his memory by continuing to live. Not all mysteries have logical explanations. Some things in life, like Obiana's cause after death, defy reason. The story reminds us that love, fate, and the unknown can sometimes intertwine in ways we may never fully understand. If you have enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share. And if you have not subscribed to the channel, please do. And don't forget to hit the notification button so that you will be the first to be notified when we upload a new story. Thank you and God bless. See you in our next video.